It's crazy to seem like it's been 16 years since the events at Marineford when Ace, Portgas D Ace, Firefist Ace met his tragic demise, but it's been that long. And with the annual One Piece World Poll coming to a close, Ace still remains in the top 10 of all characters. And that's a good thing. Ace was, a beloved character for many years, despite only appearing in the manga for essentially a cover story and basically a few scenes in the Alabasta arc. The anime obviously expanded on it, but Ace is still a beloved character amongst not only the Japanese community, but across worldwide. All right, he's a beloved character. His death, for the longest time, essentially drew a lot of sympathy towards his death, Luffy's tears, and obviously Akainu's just overall hatred of the entire series. But lately, it seems like the One Piece community, particularly the agenda piece, has basically decided to make him a veritable meme where he's being dunked on repeatedly for essentially falling for rage bait via Akainu. And look, I love a good meme. I'm totally fine with it. It's all in good humor. I've got someone right here being a very variable donut for Ace, and I think it's all well and good. But it's gotten to the point where people are kind of missing out on Ace's character as a whole, as well as the tragedy that essentially was his life and death. Because we essentially got Ace's backstory and his death, and then a post backstory all rolled together in once. All right, there really wasn't much room for us to kind of like sit and follow him as he goes on his journey. And so one of the points I want to make in this video was talk about the tragedy of Ace, why he was pretty much born to die. There was nothing he could have done, at least externally, to stop the world from trying to kill him, as well as his driving quest to find the answer to his lifelong question. Did he deserve to live? Was his existence a mistake? Okay? And so that's what I want to get into. So Ace's story begins because of his father, Roger. Pirate King Goldie Roger. Obviously spoilers for One Piece, okay? So Roger had conquered the Grand Line, went to Laugh Tale, found Joy Boy's treasure, the One Piece, and had come to the conclusion that he was at the right place, wrong time. And because of his disease, he wouldn't be able to do anything. So Roger decided in the spur of a moment that he would sire a child to carry on his legacy. Now, this was brushed off as a joke by his crewmates Rayleigh, but no, Roger had met a woman, Portgas D Rouge, in the South, and had some special sexy time with her, and conceived a child. All right? And then he decided his terminal disease was coming through, he didn't have much to live, he turned himself over to the Marines, tells Garp about his child, and then says, hey, I got a kid. Garp obviously was like, no, I'm not taking care of your kid. Why would I do that? And he knew Garp through years of fighting against him, through their battles at God Valley, against and with each other. He knew Garp was a man who wasn't going to allow the Navy to basically kill his unborn child. And, Garp obviously didn't let that happen. But this is where the tragedy begins to fall before Ace. So Cypher Paul basically reports to the world government that Roger was on an island, and he may or may not have sired a child on his time there. And so the world government decides, oh, he sired a kid. Okay, I want to basically send every Marine on the island for basically 10 months, and we need to essentially do a massive purge of all newborn children as well as all pregnant women. It's not outright confirmed in the manga, but it's heavily implied. Yes, they killed pregnant women and newborn children, right? They were determined to make sure Roger did not leave any descendants out there, okay? There was no way in hell this was going to happen. And right from the jump, Ace was pretty much marked for death his entire life, okay? There was nothing he could have done to avoid the forces that were trying to kill him, and he was pretty much set up from jump. And that's not just me saying this. Oda admitted himself, yeah, I was going to kill off Ace no matter what. This was how it was always going to go down. And so because Rouge, who, listen, there are a lot of great mobs in One Piece, a lot of dead ones too, Rouge decided to go the gangster route and decided, okay, I'm going to do the logical thing, and I'm going to delay my pregnancy for 10 months. I'm going to say it again. 10 months. That is not a normal pregnancy. It takes 9 months to come to terms with a child and give birth under normal circumstances, all right? We have premature babies all the time, but 10 months delaying your pregnancy, meaning Ace was in his mother's womb for 20 months, all right? Over 20 months. I think they gave, essentially, Roger died a year and like 3-4 months before Ace's birth. So that gives us basically a time frame where we can say, okay, so that means 20 months. So that means basically let's say it's 15 months. All right, I say 13 months, so 15 months, 12 times, let's say if it's 20 months. This basically means she doubled her pregnancy from the time she met Roger. And the effect on this just basically absolutely destroyed her body. She died shortly after giving birth to him. She loved Roger, obviously, and so she named her son Goldie Ace. Obviously, a smart move on Ace's part, not taking his dad's name, A, because he hated his father, Roger, and B, if he had said his name was Goldie Ace, it would have connected the dots much sooner. And, you know, Ace was born, and as soon as his mother gave birth to him, she gave him the name Ace. If Ace was born a girl, his name would have been Anne. We know this. And so she's handed over him to Garp, and then she just promptly dies. Okay, another dead One Piece mom. Yes, they're everywhere. Okay, and Garp takes in Ace, and he eventually just dumps Ace off at Dodon's house for Dodon to look after and raise him. He A, doesn't want the government to know that he's got another grandkid, and B, he figures that if Ace is out in the middle of nowhere, this can, you know, make sure nothing crazy happens to him. All right. Now, Garp does tell people like Scapper Gaban, apparently, because he ran into him at some point, from the most recent flashback at Elbaf, that yes, Roger has a son, and he's out there. He avoided the Marines. Now, in the One Piece world, all right, if the world government decides that you are a threat and your entire bloodline is a threat, or your entire race is, you're gone. You are cooked, okay? You are going to get wiped off the map, okay? And because Ace was born Roger's son, he immediately had the mark of death over him, all right? Now, why Garp decided to tell Ace who his father was at a young age, I don't know. But Garp essentially decided, your father was Goldie Roger. We don't know how old he was, let's say 5 or 6. Ace learns about people from Roger who just didn't know him all that well, your average civilians. And you got to put this in a larger framework, okay? Roger started the Great Pirate Era, okay? Now, he had other reasons to try to figure out someone to stop the impending catastrophe with the world flooding and fulfill Joy Boy's promise, all this. But the normal One Piece citizen doesn't know this. They just don't. They just see pirates raiding their shore and just decimating everything. And because Roger inspired this wave of piracy, all right, this basically means that everybody in the world who didn't know Roger personally, who isn't a pirate, absolutely hates him, okay? For obvious reasons, okay? Roger was the man who started this wave of piracy. He is the arch pirate, essentially. And so for a lot of people in One Piece, they hate Roger. And if they said that they would ever essentially meet Roger's descendants, if he had any, they would brutally kill and torch him, all right? Now think about this. You're 5 years old, you're 6 years old, however Ace was. That had a tremendous impact on his psyche. That just absolutely just messed with his mind and essentially gave him an existential crisis on, did his life have any meaning? Should he have been born? Was it all a mistake? All right. And this became the question for Ace's whole life. Where is my place in this world? And do I deserve to live? And was my existence all a mistake? Okay. And that basically formed it. And he begins lashing out at everybody, at the people at the Goa Kingdom, all right? Other mobsters, criminals, okay? He lashes out against the Don, Garp. He begins just to feel utmost despair in his life. And he's just trying to figure out, how can I do this? How can I find this the question to my life? Can I exist? And so for Ace, it became a lifelong question to, do I deserve to exist? Does my life have any inherent value, okay? Because that was his whole thing. He was trying to find the place where he belonged, and to answer the question, do I deserve to live? Was my existence all a mistake? And the tragedy of it is that he doesn't get those answers until the last few years of his life and right before his death when he finds those answers, okay? Because essentially, that is what he was driving for, okay? His finding the place where he belonged, ultimately Whitebeard's crew. We'll get into that. And was his existence a mistake? Does he deserve to live at all? Okay, and listen, we know in the real world, the sins of the father are not the son's to bear. Okay, that's not how it works. Okay, now in some places like, say, North Korea or in Asian cultures in general, North Korea is the most extreme case. If you commit a crime, not only are you punished, but your entire bloodline as well as relatives are all punished as well. Okay, they purge everybody. Okay, and also in Asian cultures, particularly Chinese and Japanese, there's a huge stigma with crime attached to it. And so if your father's a criminal, there's a lot of stigma attached to what happens to you, okay? You have a very bad mark on you, okay? And so this happens a lot in the series where we see characters having to suffer for their father's name or actions and having to bear the burden of it, okay? And so Ace's whole thing was, do I deserve to live? Was my existence a mistake? And he goes to Garp. And listen, I love you, Garp. You're a badass character. Love you to death. Not telling essentially a elementary student who's having an existential crisis that his life has inherent value. When Ace asks him, hey, Gramps, do you think I deserve to live, or was it all just a mistake? And Garp responds, well, that's not for me to say. You just have to keep living to find out. I'm sorry, what? You're telling me this? No, Garp, Garp. You were giving this kid to protect by his mom as she died, and his father entrusted to you before his death. And all you have to say is, oh no, that's not for me to say whether you get to live or not. You have to figure that out yourself. Like, I'm all for hands-off parenting and letting kids come to their own conclusions. But he really needed that emotional support, and Garp wasn't either receptive or just didn't care or notice, okay? And so this gets my thing with Ace. No matter what he could have done, the world was out to get him no matter what, all right? Now, this leads my next segment with Garp. Garp wanted Ace to become a Marine. He wanted Ace to join the Marines because A, he didn't want to become a pirate because most pirates die out at sea. Yes, pirates die out at sea. I know we see guys like Scabber Gaban, Rayleigh, Big Mom, Whitebeard. They are all in their 60s and 70s and all that. But most pirates die young. There's a reason for this, okay? Because when you're out big at sea, you're a criminal. You're being hunted by the world government. You don't have, you can't, there's only certain places you can go to. You've got a bounty on your head, meaning criminals will attack you on sight. And this creates a lot of problems. So Garp wanted to protect Ace. All right, and he figured that joining the Marines would have been the best way for him and Luffy. Okay, he figured that if they became members of the Marine, outstanding Marines, they would have been protected. And we first get an inkling on Ace's thoughts on the matter when he's in Impel Down, level 6, all right, with Garp, and Garp's talking to him. He says, I wanted you and Luffy to become Marines. And Ace drops a line. He's like, you don't understand, old man. Me and Luffy have the blood of world-renowned criminals in our veins, okay? There was never a way in hell we could ever become Marines. That was never going to happen, okay? And then he goes on to explain. He's like, I don't have any memories of my father. I don't have no memories of my father. Well, he didn't say Roger yet. We thought it was Dragon, but he says my father. And then he says he can keep his name. I took the name Portgas from my mother because, she basically gave her life for me, okay? I owe her so much. That's why Ace took his mom's last name. And then he elaborates on, how Whitebeard is his true father, and that's it. And so here's the thing. I genuinely do believe that even if Ace had joined the Marines, there's like, what if Ace joined the Marines with Luffy and Sabo? I'll put one up on the screen. I genuinely do believe there is absolutely nothing he could have done to avert catastrophe because he would have been killed anyway by the government. Because think about this. In the One Piece world, they began trying to kill him before he was even born. He had done nothing. He was just, an embryo in his mother's womb. All right? And they immediately marked him for death. And if he had joined the Marines and it gets out that he's Roger's son, he's being put to death. They're going to arrest him as a threat. The moment he does anything suspicious even, they're like, you're sentenced to death, you're Roger's kid. He could have done nothing, okay? And he would have been put to death. And in the eyes of the One Piece world, it would have been like, oh, he's Roger's son. He's the spawn of the Satan. He deserves to die. Because, propaganda in the One Piece world is very powerful, okay? Case in point, okay? This gets into the Ace light novels. There's 2 Ace light novels. They show Ace's early years as a pirate with the Spade crew. And the second one essentially follows up when they go to the New World and he joins Whitebeard, okay? In the first novel, you meet Mass Deuce, all right? Mass Deuce essentially was Ace's right-hand man. He was the second member of the Spade Pirates. They formed together. He's the one who built especially the striker ship that Ace uses with his flame powers to get around. And when Ace accidentally let it slip that he was Roger's son, Mass immediately began to demonize him as like the worst person, all right? He thought Ace was just evil and he didn't deserve to live. They were both starving. And then, Mass tries to kill Ace for some food. It doesn't work out. Ace doesn't care. He's like, hey, do you want some food? And Master immediately realized, oh, wow, he's actually a really nice guy. I don't deserve this. All right. And then he essentially can realize, oh, no, I was falling into the propaganda. Ace is a really good guy. He doesn't deserve this. Why was I like this? And so they form a friendship and they start their crew. Okay. And Ace, despite going out to sea, didn't want adventure, didn't want to become Pirate King. He didn't want to essentially follow in his father's footsteps, because this gets alluded to in the second light novel by Deuce, where he explains if Ace does find One Piece, if he did become the Pirate King, that wouldn't make him feel satisfied, because essentially he would be doing what his father did first. All right, he wouldn't be able to escape the stigma of being Roger's son. Okay, he didn't want that. He wanted people to view him as his own man, not his dad's kid. And so for Ace, that was just like a haunting image of just like, okay, how can I get out and escape my lineage of being my father? Okay, and so when he meets up with Shanks in that second light novel, it gets explained. Ace wants to just destroy the world. He wants to take out this Tenryubutai. Butai. He wants to take down the Navy. He wants all these grand goals. And someone like Ben Beckman's like, he probably should have been a revolutionary since he loves to brawl. Because Ace essentially went out to sea with no real aspirations other than just to fight, okay? And we know what he ultimately was looking for. He was looking for a place where he belonged, okay? That's the second part of it, okay? Ace's whole thing was trying to find value in his existence, okay? Things became easier when he met Sabo and Luffy and they became brothers. That obviously helped a little bit. But once he goes out to sea and he essentially travels, he's not looking for the One Piece. He's not looking to become Pirate King. He's not even looking for adventure. He essentially is trying to find, okay, does my life have any value? What is it? Where can I go out in this world and be accepted for who I am? Okay? And this gets into where he meets Whitebeard. And it's through his conversation with Whitebeard, he gets absolutely demolished. Meeting Whitebeard, seeing the family-like nature of the Whitebeard crew, Ace begins to slowly accept it. And then, he finally gives in and becomes Whitebeard's adoptive son. And so for Ace, this was the end of his journey. He was satisfied. He found the question, okay, the first part of his journey. Where do I belong? Where do I fit in this world? And he found it on Whitebeard's ship. He had found his found family. He had a new father figure, which is something he always wanted. I'm sure when he joined Whitebeard's crew, as soon as he got the tattoo and they exchanged the sake cups, he immediately was just like, this is it. This is what I want. This is what I want. And Ace since he found the place where he belonged, it meant everything to him. Now, the second part of his quest about finding his own existence, whether it had value or not, that does not happen in Submarine Fort. And so we know what happens. Teach commits murder on Whitebeard's crew, kills Thatch for the Yami Yami no Mi. Ace leaves against Whitebeard's protest and the protests of other crew members. He tries to hunt him down, gets beat down at Banana Island, gets thrown to the Navy for execution, and then he's just sitting on the scaffold, essentially as a battle begins between Whitebeard's crew and their allies and the Marines, okay? And on that scaffold, Ace essentially is just like begging his crewmates. He asks Whitebeard, why did you come to save me? I did this myself. You don't have to save me, Pops. Like, I brought this on myself. And Whitebeard's like, no. He tries to explain it away, cover for Ace, and he's like, no, you're my kid. I'm taking responsibility. I'm here to protect you, okay? And then, all the other Whitebeard members show up. They fight him. And then you also see Luffy showing up, and he just freaks out. He's like, no, please, just leave anything but you, okay? It was bad enough to see his found family showing up to protect him, but now his little brother was there to protect him. He just absolutely couldn't accept it. And seeing them just risk their lives, you see what happens with Oris Jr. pushing through their own bodies. He breaks down. He breaks down and just cries. Tears of sadness, but also joy. Because in that moment, he finally had, essentially the answer to what he was looking for. Do I deserve to live? Does my existence matter? Yes, it does. He finally had the answer that he was looking for. It took a war, his friends dying, and some of them being grievously injured to protect him, his little brother almost dying like 6 times over the course of Impel down at Marineford. And he finally has the answer that he's seeking. He finally has the answer to, okay, does my life have inherent value? And then this gets to the next part of this, okay, the tragedy of it, okay? Ace finally has the answer that he's looking for, okay? And then he's ready to move on, and obviously him and Luffy are freed. Luffy frees them. They're on their way to freedom, and then Akainu has the infamous, and says, "Oh, Whitebeard is but a washed-up has-been." Now listen, people clown Ace for falling for the rage bait, and I get it. It's great meme culture. It's totally fair. Agenda piece. I get it. Totally fair. It's all in good humor. Love it. But the reason why Akainu's rage bait was so effective because it got at the heart of who Ace was and his issues. his devotion to Whitebeard, because Whitebeard was his savior, his father figure, and his absolute detestation, his hatred for his biological father, Roger. Because when I even said, Whitebeard's a washed up loser, all right? He's forever Roger's whipping boy. He'll never be Pirate King. Your dad, Roger's the real greatest pirate. Whitebeard, he ain't shit. And Ace just could not accept that. He flies off the handlebar, and he obviously attacks him. He gets absolutely wrecked, and then, he looks at Luffy, who's about to get killed, and then he steps into it. Now Ace has the heartfelt moment where he apologizes to Luffy, and he's like, I'm sorry for doing this. Thank you, sorry for trying for me. This world never really wanted a man with so much bad blood in their veins. I've always been a good for nothing, and I don't know what to say in these final moments, but thank you for loving me. Thank you for being my brother. Thank you and Sabo for being a part of my life. Pops, tell the Don my regards. I'm grateful for all of your love. And then he dies after shedding tears of joy that he's grateful, because the tragedy of Ace is that he didn't find the answer to, okay, where can I belong in this world? Whitebeard's crew, because he joined Whitebeard's crew 2 years before his death, and then he did not find the answer essentially a few minutes before his death. Does my life have inherent value? Okay? And that's what, a lot of people seem to overlook Ace's character, because now it's been reduced to, oh, he fell for rage bait. Oh, he overhyped himself, and he was he basically picked fights with Whitebeard, Teach, Akainu, and got absolutely demolished in all those fights. And he did. Okay? Ace was not perfect, okay? But I've always been of the opinion that I don't give him crap for going after Blackbeard, because A, Blackbeard did commit the ultimate pirate sin, murdering your crewmates, and B, when he did catch it to Blackbeard was going to try to murder Luffy. So at that point, Ace had to fight him. Just that was inevitable. Now you could argue if one of the other commanders went with him to help, fine, totally okay with that. But he tries to do that, and we know what happens. He falls for the rage bait. He turns back, and he just dies very tragically in Luffy's arms. And one of the things I want to address here was, he's a tragic character because he spent his whole life trying to find, essentially, answers to the questions that he only got right before his death. And his death essentially just shattered Luffy. Luffy, who was always just known for his cheerful optimism and just overwhelming sense of, never giving up, never stop trying, okay? Giving it his all. Luffy collapsed. Luffy gave into complete despair. It utterly broke him, all right? It essentially just wrecks the Whitebeard pirates' morale. And so Marco shows up to try to galvanize them to protect Luffy. And then they just continue to fight from there, and it goes from there. And so the tragedy of Ace is he essentially was marked for death, because no matter what path he could have chosen, the world was going to try to kill him no matter what, okay? If he had joined the Marines, he would have been, the moment they find out, it could come to acknowledge who his father is, they will try to kill him. If he joined Whitebeard's crew, and he had found, security and safety among Whitebeard's family, but the moment he got caught, it just, because most Marines are being out later from subsequent arcs, don't mess with Yonko crews directly, okay? They don't mess with them directly, because that means you're antagonizing them, and that means all-out war. They don't want to deal with the hassle of it. It's just a whole thing. The reason why the Navy was willing to take that gamble with Whitebeard was because Ace was Roger's son. This was not just some random pirate execution. They wanted to break the spirit of piracy. We know what happens. Whitebeard's dying words effectively made the whole war pointless. And so this is why he was just marked for death no matter what outcome he could have chosen. Would he have been better off if he became a revolutionary? I doubt it. No matter what the tragedy of Ace is, no matter what he could have done, he was always going to die. He was always going to be put to death. He was always going to die, whether it be from Oda's hands or just the One Piece universe equivalent. And his whole existence was essentially trying to find the places where he belonged and where he would find, okay, does my life have meaning? Does it have worth? And the ultimate tragedy is that he just couldn't find a place where he belonged. Well, anyway, that's my little piece on that. Y'all have a wonderful day. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Peace out.